Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. And we are talking about the second Future Foundation series, the second FF series. Came out of Marvel now. It's written by Matt Fraction. It has art by Mike Allred. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing great, Bob. Man, this series really messed me up at the beginning because I go to volume 1 and it's issue number 4. It's a pain in the butt.
I think they fixed that on later collections. I think that's just the initial trade paperbacks that were confused. But yeah, to be specific, we're talking about the first 8 issues of Future Foundation. But I think it's the first trade originally of this run of Future Foundation from Marvel now. Only collected issues 3 to 8 or something.
Yes, it's a bit off, but it's good reading, though. It's a really good series.
Matt Fraction is doing a Fantastic Four run at the same time, but they don't intersect that much. I don't think the run on Fantastic Four is bad, but I don't think it's especially great or worth talking about. Well, I do think this Future Foundation run is great. Originally, Matt, we'd wanted to do this long ago to immediately follow up on our coverage of Hickman's Fantastic Four and Future Foundation run. However, I think we got first caught up by maybe Star Trek Strange New Worlds coming back. And then I wanted us to get the jump on another podcast that was going to cover Hickman's Avengers runs. I was no, we have to go ahead and do Hickman's Avengers run. So this got left by the wayside. And I'm having to circle back to it as part of our continuing mop-up operation on some Fantastic Four and Doctor comics as we build up eventually to the Doctor Doom movie at the end of this year that I'm probably not going to see. Matt is probably going to see
I'll
it.
totally see it. I have to see the Doom movie, Bob. Come on.
Fraction's the writer for this, Matt. What have you read by Fraction going into this?
Bob, I have read his Hawkeye. It was really good. That's the stuff with Kate Bishop, correct?
It
Yeah.
splits between Clint and Kate. There's some later Hawkeye stuff that's just Kate, but Fractions is both Clint and.
Then I read his Iron Man stuff, which I enjoyed. I don't think you
Yeah,
enjoyed his.
I find Iron Man comics get dated pretty fast. Not just a problem with Fraction. That's a problem with Warren Ellis. It's a problem with almost any writer, unfortunately, for me at least.
I enjoyed his Iron Man run because he took Iron Man back to the basics. He was having to get rid of all his armor, so he had to go all the way back to his first armor.
Fraction took over right after Civil War, as I recall.
It was more of an odyssey, an epic in a sense. Whereas typically with Iron Man, you don't get that. It's more like the stuff I'm reading now, like the current Iron Man run. This is 2026. You're right about the technology piece. The stuff he's talking about is AI related things. The tech of today.
And now
It is Joshua Williamson.
I like Williamson sometimes. He's done Flash runs, and he's also doing Superman right now at DC, and he's bringing back the Legion in September.
You start reading and you're like, oh, this is like current day technology. They're really on top of things. But if I read this 10 years from now, are we going to have something even better? And Iron Man is using the old stuff.
A few other Fraction series I like. I love his Immortal Iron Fist. At some distant point, wouldn't mind covering that for the podcast. I like his X-Men run, which I think is somewhat of an unpopular opinion. Not everybody digs his X-Men run. Then I think we've both read, I've at least read the first trade of Fraction's run on Batman. I haven't gone past that, but you've read some of Fraction's Batman, right?
I've read all the way up to the current issue.
Fully caught up.
Very good story, very fun. I hate to say this, but after Hush 2, come on.
You're just saying it just doesn't compare to Hush 2.
Hush 2 is so bad. I'm not saying that Matt Fraction's work is amazing, but compared to Hush, we're getting great Batman now.
Both Hush 2 and the thing that was happening before Hush 2, Chip Zdarsky's run. I hate both, actually. I dislike Chip Zdarsky's run on Batman. And what I've read of the Matt Fraction run on Batman has been a breath of fresh air to me. James Tynion was the writer before Zdarsky, and I'm not sure if I prefer Tynion or Fractions, but we're back to the best Batman's been at least since James Tynion with Matt Fraction.
I'm a little different on that, Bob. I enjoy some of James Tynion's stuff. It was not my favorite. But the Zdarsky stuff is wackadoodle. It has some fun moments. I see why you hate it, and that you can probably see why I enjoy it to some degree.
I don't think I knew this about you and the Zdarsky run. My boy Noah hates the Zdarsky run too. We both about it. We're still furious about it a year later. And I think I just projected that onto you. That's fun.
Something so surreal about what happens in the story. It's a weird tale. And it does have some of the Grant Morrison type stuff. I'm not saying that it is any comparison to Grant Morrison's work, no. But it does go back to some of those things. If you dislike the Batman of Zur-En-Dahl, whatever it's called, you're going to hate it.
The funny thing is that both Noah and I adore the Grant Morrison Batman run, and we both often bemoan the fact that a lot of Morrison's stuff was just not taken up by later writers. We're both self-conscious enough to admit that, okay, Morrison is a cut above. Not every writer who follows them is going to be up to Morrison's standard. So we even allow for some difference in quality. But then when we got to Zdarsky doing some Morrison stuff, the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh in particular, it just curled in our mouths and we just hate it.
I read the Zdarsky run month to month, and I looked forward to it.
This is a funny thing. I thought about it might be interesting for us to do the Zdarsky run on Batman anyway, even though I hate it. And in a way, that's maybe something of a compliment to it of I hate it, but I at least think it would make for an interesting podcast. But now that I know that you have some positivity towards it, that makes me think it might be a more interesting podcast.
It has some elements to it that are interesting. And I also wouldn't mind reading it along with you because I'm sure there's stuff in there that I didn't point out my first time going through it that you probably would catch that I didn't. That's beside the point, but we're going off in the weeds here because we're here to talk about Fraction. We're here to talk about Fraction, and Fraction's a great writer. And this FF run, it's funny. That's part of it. It has some down-to-earth elements with fantastical characters.
Hawkeye, and to a lesser extent, his Iron Fist and his Batman. Yeah, it's funny. I also want to talk about the artist real briefly. I love Mike Allred. He's one of my favorite artists. I've met him at Emerald City Comic Con. He's a lovely guy. His wife and sometimes collaborator Laura is a lovely lady. I had a great time with my friend Alex just shooting the crap with them a decade ago. Mike and Laura are great people. But I didn't know, are you familiar with Mike Allred's art at all?
No.
The thing he's probably famous for are he did a run with Peter Milligan. Initially it was X-Force, and they renamed it Ecstatics. And it was coming out at the same time as the Grant Morrison X-Men run. And it's a surreal, interesting early aughts take on superheroes. He also did the comic iZombie with Chris Roberson for Vertigo. That's a great for trade comic. I like it a lot. And then it got loosely adapted into a CW show. We might do both of those at some point on the podcast. He has a great run on the Silver Surfer with Dan Slott from the early 2010s. That's good. Maybe of more immediate interest to you, since I made you watch all the Legion cartoon episodes. He did a one-shot or a two-shot for DC a couple years back. That was Batman 66 meets the Legion of Superheroes. That was fun.
I've read some of that Dan Slott Silver Surfer run.
It ends maybe a little weak, but it's a good 5 or 6 volume run, and it's something I've thought about us eventually doing for the show. I think it's maybe Slott's best and most consistent work, even though the end is maybe a little iffy. But all right, let's get into these 8 issues, Matt. So the title for this trade is Fantastic Foe, which I do have to say is a great pun. I got to give the for that pun. And then the first issue is Parts of a Whole. What goes down in Parts of a Whole, Matt?
So the Fantastic Four are going on a trip that should only last 4 minutes, but they recruit a backup Fantastic Four to run the Future Foundation just in case they do not return.
One thing early in this issue I like is that we get Valeria snidely quoting her father, Reed, but it's also a funny meta joke because it's Matt Fraction as Val snidely quoting John Hickman, because this is the Future Foundation run immediately after John Hickman's Fantastic Four and Future Foundation runs. That little bit of meta text to it made me laugh.
I remember at the time we had come off reading the Hickman run when we originally went to read this, so yeah, brought back some memories.
When I started to reread this, Matt, I initially felt I should apologize to you because it starts off with Franklin and Valeria talking directly into the camera. And that was all over the place in the aughts in the early 2010s as a reference to The Office and Parks and Rec.
It was documentary.
Exactly. And it's such an awful thing for a comic book. Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning's Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the basis for the movie, it does that. And it's an otherwise mostly good comic, but it's derailed by that constant documentary frame. So I initially was, oh God, I didn't remember this at all. I'm so sorry I made Matt read this. And you get to the next page and it's, oh no, it's just Frank and Val talking to Ant-Man. It's not a
no
documentary
biggie.
Gag. It's fine.
No biggie at all.
So Matt, what line would you prefer for Franklin? Would you prefer him to say, to me, my Galactus, or would you prefer him to say, I have a Galactus like a pet?
I don't know, Bob. That line, to me, my Galactus, still resonates with me.
When you were reading or rereading, as the case was, this issue, Matt, did you remember the stuff about Ant-Man's daughter, Cassie, dying?
I knew she had died at some point, but I didn't remember what the situation was. Did it involve Ant-Man not doing something to save her? I didn't know the situation.
I can't remember the situation. It's in a Young Avengers crossover called Children's Crusade that I read a long time ago and don't remember. And it involves Doctor Doom. I don't think it's Ant-Man fails to do something so much as he can't get to her in time, maybe. But originally, and this was a mistake, we should have read this between the Hickman run on Fantastic Four and the Hickman run on Avengers, because we read a lot of side books for the Hickman Avengers. And one of those side books was Avengers World. And in Avengers World, we see Doctor Doom. This is in the Axis crossover when his alignment is switched, but he gets Scarlet Witch to resurrect Cassie. So we've read the resurrection story already, but we haven't read this story that's dealing with her death.
This is Scott Lang Ant-Man, right?
Same one who's the lead in the movies, right?
This is the Paul Rudd guy.
The Paul Rudd one. Yeah. Which is funny because I hate Paul Rudd as Ant-Man now, but I haven't let it sour me on Scott Lang yet.
So that's good, because it doesn't quite look like him in the comic.
He's got that Mike Allred expression, which is nice. And I remember, Matt, I think this was true both in the Hickman run of Fantastic Four and then when we read the Jack Kirby run on Fantastic Four, I think you always really struggled with Dragon Man as a character, if I'm remembering correctly. And so I was going to ask, did you find him explaining himself as I'm neither a dragon nor a man? Was that helpful for you?
It's fine now, Bob. Now that I've gone all the way and reread Kirby's run and his introduction and everything, and every time he came back after that, I feel like I've read so much Dragon Man, it's ridiculous. I have no issues with him now, which is funny because going back and looking at the notes and remembering, I probably was confused at the time. I also am excited too that they do have name tags for all the characters here. However, I know their numbers now, so I'm good.
Wow. Yeah.
I knew that was Bentley.
Spoilers to the end of our coverage of the next volume of this. I think I still prefer the Hickman Future Foundation to this run. This is a good run, but the Hickman run is better. But that said, you do have to give Fraction props for, I think he finds better things to do with the kids of the Future Foundation and better things to do with the different Moloids and the different Atlanteans than Hickman did in his Future Foundation series.
It keeps them busy because you have two sets of stories going in these issues, the adult characters and the kids. Yeah, they do crossover, but you do have that throughout.
That's a good way to describe it. You also have a lot of Inhuman stuff in this issue, and I believe this is a year or two before. I don't know if you remember this, but Fraction was supposed to take over the Inhumans, and his mandate was to make the Inhumans Marvel's version of Game of Thrones. But I think he only wound up doing like an issue.
Yeah, the TV show flopped, yeah. Which I went back and watched not that long ago because it's the fact they cut Medusa's hair in the first episode. That's the dumbest part. That to me, you just wanted to get around the CGI. You couldn't just come up with a better way.
Daddy is Black Bolt.
That's why I originally watched it, because I'm okay. We got Anson Mount here as the lead. He's playing a mute character, but I like Anson Mount. He was all right. I didn't mind him as much. His brother, Maximus, was interesting. I liked Maximus, the way he was portrayed.
Did you recognize the actor at all?
No, I didn't. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I didn't watch the whole run either. That's the other thing too, which is, for me, that's usually concerning, which means there's probably something I didn't like about it that I don't remember.
It looked pretty bad, and I didn't have any affection for Anson Mount when it came out, but because of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I have lots of affection for Anson Mount, and so I've thought about trying it, but I never have.
Bob, here you got Invisible Woman recruiting Medusa, so that's a good member. That's a good replacement member.
Although my favorite replacement member, or at least my favorite recruiting scenario for a replacement member, is that we have Reed, Sue, and Ben agonize over their replacement, but we have the replacement agonize over whether to accept the offer. But Johnny forgets about it, and he asks the celebrity he hooked up with to do it, which is hilarious.
Yep, she's excited about it. So we've got Medusa, She-Hulk, the celebrity girl, and Ant-Man.
Man, that's right. That'll move us into issue number 2, The Big Goodbye, which is an amusing joke about Raymond Chandler. And what's the plot for The Big Goodbye, Matt?
So the plot of The Big Goodbye, Bob, is the Fantastic Four are not, in fact, gone for 4 minutes.
So we get a headline from the Daily Bugle, Matt, that says the Antastic Four. And I gotta ask, do you think J. Jonah Jameson wrote the Antastic Four headline?
Possibly. Either him or Robbie.
That's more a Robbie Robertson joint.
That's probably more Robbie.
Yeah, I can do that. Did you catch the joke that the Fantastic Foe's first villain is the Mole Man, like in Fantastic Four 1 back in?
They get to take on the same dudes. Pretty cool.
We get Darla Deering, the celebrity that Johnny's was hooking up with and got to replace him. She becomes Miss Thing. So in a funny way, you have two Thing replacements that both She-Hulk and Miss Thing or Darla are subbing in for Ben Grimm in that sense. But that's okay, Matt, because at the end of this issue, we get another Human Torch showing up to replace the original Human Torch. And this is a bizarro Human Torch saying that the Fantastic Four is dead. Was that a surprise when you originally read this?
Pretty surprised, Bob. He's pretty scary looking too. We get the Human Torch from the future.
It's got a black face that he turns on and off.
There's something off about him that just isn't
It
quite
seems
right.
crazy, yeah. That moves us into issue number 3, Old John Storm. Matt, what goes down in Old John Storm?
In Old John Storm, Bob, with the thing gone, the Yancey Street Gang aims their prank war at Darla Deering.
Yeah, and so my first question for you for this issue, Matt, Old John Storm, do you think he's meant to more be a satire of Cable, of Nathaniel Richards, who would have been really fresh for us coming off the Hickman run back when, or do you think he's a satire of Old Man Logan, which was, I think, also popular in Marvel Comics about this time?
Honestly, Bob, when I look at him, all I can think of is Cable. He's got the metal arm, he's got the metal leg, he's got an eye that's messed up, he's got the white hair. He literally looks like Cable.
We are watching this at the same time that we're watching X-Men 97. So
Yeah.
I agree with you that the metal prosthesis makes you think Cable. Another question, if I'm remembering right, Old John Storm is telling a scary campfire story of a villain that is named Doom, the Annihilating Conqueror. And Doom, the Annihilating Conqueror, as the name might suggest, is a merger of Doctor Doom, Annihilus, and King the Conqueror. And do you agree with me in Bentley 23 that Doom the Annihilating Conqueror is a sick design?
But it's a combination of their three outfits too.
But it looks good, really makes them smooth together.
It does. Whenever the character is writing, is really cool looking too.
It almost looks like another Jack Kirby design, Orion from the New Gods. But maybe that's a specific reference to something of Annihilus's or something of Kang's that I'm not thinking of too. But yeah, definitely looks like Orion. Matt, the other question I really had for you from this issue, we have the Moloids who were attached to Ben in Hickman's run get really attached to Jen, to She-Hulk in this run. And I wanted to ask you, do you think the Moloids think of Jen as merely a substitute for Ben? Or have they replaced Ben with her? Like when Ben comes back, are the Moloids going to be loyal to the Jen and not loyal to the Ben?
Oh, they'll be loyal to the Ben. It's a substitute at this point. They'll
When
just switch
Ben
back.
gets, so they're just going to ignore the Jen when
Oh
they're
yeah,
Ben?
yeah. They can only focus on one strange creature at
I,
a time.
I like to give the Moloids credit and imagine it's both, but I have to confess I don't remember if that's ever addressed.
I bet it's not.
Matt, during this issue, we have Wyatt Wingfoot come back. And when we originally were reading this, you didn't know who he was, but we've gone through the Kirby run. So, and I think you weren't a super big fan of how Wyatt Wingfoot was portrayed in the Kirby run, if I remember correctly. But did you have any thoughts about them bringing in Wyatt Wingfoot, who's confirming that Old John is, in fact, at least a version of Johnny Storm?
It was okay to see Wyatt Wingfoot. At least it brought in a character who could make that confirmation and determine if he was being truthful or not. He's just such a side character. There's nothing important about him. The reason he stuck out so bad in the Kirby run is because they tried to make him a fifth member of the Fantastic Four. And it was odd. He was supposed to be an avatar for the reader, and you don't need that in a comic book with four superheroes.
It's very late in the run to be introducing a reader surrogate character.
Right.
Even though Wyatt had some charming things about him, he doesn't have powers, which makes him a little bit the odd man out. Then there was also the thing of, I think Kirby and Lee had the best of intentions with Wyatt Wingfoot, but there were some things about him, and especially about his dad, when his dad shows up in a 1 or 2 issue story that were super stereotypical. So it's, how much is this a good representation of American Indians versus not?
It was a little strange, yeah.
All that said, I'm fond of how they use Wyatt Wingfoot in the next issue. So that takes us to issue number 4, Escalation. What goes down in that issue, Mo?
So Bentley and the Moloids try to sabotage Wyatt Wingfoot and She-Hulk's not date, but it backfires.
Even before that, we get Ant-Man firing Alex Power for calling him a fascist. Was that surprising to you?
I was all right with it. I never liked the Power Children, Bob. Alex Power can go away. He's not even a kid anymore, is he? I think he's an adult, isn't he? 18.
I think of him as an older teenager, but I can't remember precisely how they present him. Matt still remembers that really uncomfortable Spider-Man Power Pack
Oh,
PSA
God.
comic that we're not going to discuss again.
No, we're not.
Matt, to give a little context about this, about some other Marvel characters, if I'm remembering this right, we get some tension between Medusa and Old John. And Medusa and Johnny, I don't think had dated in the main Marvel timeline up to this point. But a couple years later in Charles Soule's Inhumans run, because if I'm remembering right, Fraction only writes an issue and then Charles takes over the Inhuman series. And in that run, Johnny and Medusa date, which is weird because if you'll remember the Kirby run, Johnny's one true love's younger sister, Crystal. And so
Right.
I don't think Fraction is stepping into it as much as Soul would later, but that puts us in a little bit of weird territory here.
It really does. It's a strange kind of thing going on.
Although we get a little bit of an out for it maybe at the end of the issue because we have Medusa showing up to tempt Bentley 23 into evil. And we're going to find out in the next issue that the wingless wizard wants Bentley back and he's brainwashed Medusa again. So Medusa's reverting to the first time we see her in the Kirby run when she's working for the Frightful Four with the wizard, right?
She's going back to being a bad guy. And for those of you who don't remember, Bentley is the wizard's son.
He is his son, but he's also, if I
Clone
remember,
thing.
yeah, younger clone, right? Matt, that takes us to issue number 5, Spooky Kids. What goes down there?
And Spooky Kids, Bob, in an issue with a lot of parallels with the original FF number 4, where Johnny quits the team and finds an amnesic hobo Namor, the Fantastic Foe has to stop Old John from going on a rampage.
Matt, would you rather have a teleporting dog or a trained panther to help you out?
Teleporting dog, Bob.
And you've already established that you were suspicious of Alex Power. How did you feel about him joining up with Dr. Doom?
It makes sense, and Dr. Doom doesn't treat him very nicely either, so I'm good with that.
Dr. Doom correctly evaluates Alex Power's work.
Yeah, you're pretty worthless here, so I'm just going to turn you into a bad guy.
So we've got the wizard doesn't have a Frightful Four, if I'm remembering correctly. He can't get a fourth member, but it's him, Medusa, and Blastar. And I know in the past, Matt, you've not been a big fan of Blastar, but do you like the way Allred draws him here, maybe as opposed to the somewhat different way that we saw Kirby draw him or that we saw Barry Windsor Smith drew Blastar in the Silver Age X-Men?
The way Blastar is drawn here in this issue, he looks a lot more like Solomon Grundy.
I didn't think about that, but you're totally right, yeah. This is a lot more on his hair.
Yeah, he looks more dirty here. He gives me Woodsman vibes from Twin Peaks to some degree.
He's the woodsman from the Negative Zone. I like it.
Yeah, and he's got red eyes. I dig it. The way he's drawn here better. It's less spacey and more just beast type.
A little more down to earth, like you're saying. The affinities with Twin Peaks are right, although it is interesting that I think this is 2 years before Peaks the Return.
Yeah,
but I
this
think
is
you're right,
2013. Yeah.
That's fun. That'll move us on to issue number 6, Save the Tiger, Matt. What goes down in Save the Tiger?
So Darla Deering unplugs and is bum rushed by the Yancey Street gang and then saved by Ant-Man.
Do you like when MTV does unplugged concerts, Matt? Or are you opposed to that?
That's like, you're asking me if I liked when MTV did them. Yes, they were okay. But that was 20 years ago.
Does MTV still air? I don't even
I don't know, Bob. They did the unplugs. It was just like acoustic sets.
Which is
Yeah.
what Darla Deering is up to here. Then we get something else here. We see Herbie, originally from the Fantastic Four cartoon in the 70s, I think, but Herbie's gone Doom, Matt.
Kirby's gone Doom. He's looking dark, man. Looking real dark. Got the red eyes.
Yeah, he's got that cowl too, right?
Yeah, he's pretty scary looking.
Oh man, that will move us to issue number 7.
In the worst field trip ever, the Future Foundation of Fantastic Four rescue Bentley and Medusa from the clutches of the Wizard and his frightful 3 in the Negative Zone.
The main thing that stood out to me in this issue is we actually see the Future Foundation kids do combat. And as far as I can remember, and granted, it's now been a long time since we've covered Hickman Future Foundation run, but as far as I can remember, that didn't happen in the Hickman run, right?
No, they didn't. Here they've got laser guns and blaster things on their arms, and the Moloids are running around in this mech unit thing. So, no, we didn't see this in the Hickman run.
Nice, nice. And then, Matt, we'll wrap up today with number 8, Can't Go Home Again. What goes down and Can't Go Home Again?
Things come to a boil between Medusa and She-Hulk.
Before that, Matt, you get your dream of Dr. Doom hurls a wine goblet at Alex Power, like the Big Lebowski, which I enjoyed, and I think you enjoyed even more than me because you're a confirmed Alex Power hater.
Then he pulls Alex Power's head up by the hair, and it's not blood on his face, it's wine, but I imagine it's blood.
It's imagining Alex Powers blading like John Moxley.
Then he shoves his face into a window, and who's on the other side of the window, Bob? Alex's parents.
Ooh, man, getting beat up in front of your parents, shameful.
And requires that he call him master. Doom not playing around.
Doom does not play that. Doom does not play. I don't know if you remember this, but back during our coverage of the Hickman Future Foundation run, we had an extensive conversation about the Thing Ring. Does seeing Darla Deering use the Thing Ring, does that make you happy?
Yeah.
Initially, she's using a robot suit that I think we did see in the Kirby run that redesigned when Ben had lost his
When they all lose their powers, yeah, way back in the
yeah,
day.
I can't remember the specifics, but at this point, that suit is being combined with the Thing. There's also a nice little bit in this comic I like where Bentley sees Tong and is noticing that Tong is wearing a dress now. And so Bentley says, Tong. And Tong says, what? And Bentley says, nothing. You look great. And Tong says, thank you. I'm much happier.
Yeah, that was sweet.
It was sweet. At the end, in a little bit of an anticipation of Doom the Annihilating Conqueror, we see Dr. Doom meet with Kang and Annihilus. But you also have Ravonna here. Have you ever heard of Ravonna, Matt? She's not somebody I'm super.
No.
So she's Kang's sometimes lover, and mostly she's called Ravonna, but sometimes they give her a very 90s code name of Terminatrix, which on the one hand is 90s cringy, but on the other hand, given that she's a time traveler like Kang, is a little bit clever, I think.
The name Terminatrix sounds so familiar to me, but I don't know why. Maybe we had a card of her or something back in the day. We used to have Marvel collecting cards, and I swear there were characters I've never seen again on those cards.
Were those Overpower cards, or was there a different kind of card?
Different kind of card. Overpower was a card game.
Yeah, and there were Marvel and DC, although I think we actually mostly had DC power cards, now that
We did, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Matt, in the whole in this collection, all 8 issues, what's your favorite dialogue?
So, Bob, on page 8 of issue number 3, the Moloids are talking to Mole Man, and they are exchanging something to make for tribute. And when they return, the Moloids tell Mole Man, do not contact us again. Then one of them was that harsh? That sounded harsh, Mick. Then he goes, I hate him, Tong. I do not care. I would fill this chamber with molten steel if I could. Too far, Mick. Melting steel. They really don't like the Mole Man. They really don't.
Yeah, it's funny that it's an abusive dad allegory.
It's come full circle in a sense. That's why I like that line.
It makes an interesting contrast with Alex Powers' relationships with Ant-Man and his parents, and also with Bentley's relationship with the Wizard, right? Yeah. My dialogue is less deep, but I like on page 6 where the Yancey Street gang, they're yelling at Darla Deering, only the Thing is the Thing, and we don't need no dumb pop bunny pretending to be him and replacing him.
They really go mean on Darla Deering in this.
They do, and it's a little bit of a comment on Twitter mobs or the way female pop stars get a lot of hate, right? What was your favorite visual in the collection, Matt?
At one point, there's a cutaway at the Baxter building in issue number 5. And we have seen this before, especially in the Kirby run, so it's cool to see it again, drawn, updated, but with the Future Foundation kids and what they're up to within the building and what they like to do.
Allred does a good imitation of Kirby, then he also has his other influences. One thing about Allred that you might find interesting, Matt, do you know the comic series Madman?
Yeah.
Allred did Madman, and then also, I think this is true, I don't actually know, but I think if you remember the WB cartoon Freakazoid,
Yeah.
Freakazoid was basically just Madman. I've never actually read Madman. Is Madman a little more adult?
Yeah, I do believe so. I remember that Madman had action figures at one point.
One thing I'll look at, I'm not sure if we'd actually do it, but I have seen in a list of best Superman comics of the 90s, people will put Mike Allred's Superman and Madman crossover at. So I've never read it, but maybe that would be interesting to do. I don't know. All right, so you liked Allred's Kirby-inspired but distinct cutaway at the Baxter building because you always like a good cutaway diagram. That's your jam. I also like a splash page that Allred does that is, whereas yours is modeled on blueprints or plan, mine is modeled on a dance step instruction, but it's in issue number 4. You have the dance page of She-Hulk and Wyatt Wingfoot on their not date, and it's laid out like a dance instruction. I like that.
That was a creative page. Now, that does point out too, Bob, that was my favorite issue, the issue with She-Hulk and Wyatt on their not date.
Yeah, it's a really good issue, and yeah, it's nice. I'm sure Wyatt's been used well in other stuff in between Kirby and Fraction, but I haven't read a lot of it, so it's nice to see Fraction use them well here. I see what you're saying with 4, definitely. I think I would have to go with number 2 just because the Daily Bugle headline, Darla Deering becoming Mrs. Thing, Old Man Johnny still showing up as a cliffhanger at the end, the joke about the mole man, it's all there.
Now, my favorite character, Bob, that Fraction writes is She-Hulk. I enjoy She-Hulk, and here he doesn't miss the mark. She has that certain level of humor to her and wit that you have to get right.
Yeah.
He's able to accomplish that.
It can be difficult to hit the right balance of humor of She-Hulk where it's funny, but it's not she becomes a joke, right?
Exactly.
It's that well.
She's not just female Incredible Hulk either.
Fraction does well by Jen. I'm gonna go with Miss Thing. She's fun. I think she's basically been in no other comics after this run, which is a shame. But you were saying that they belatedly, after issue number 50, try to bring Wyatt Wingfoot in as that man on the street POV character for Fantastic Four, and it feels a little unnecessary that late in the run. They're doing that with Darla Deering, Mrs. Thing here, but I think it works a little better, right? Because she's more embedded in the action with the Thing suit and the Thing ring.
She's more of a fish out of water, too.
Exactly. So next time we're going to cover the second and final volume of this series, The Future Foundation. That's Family Freakout. It's issues 9 through 16. And then we'll take a little break for a while and mostly just enjoy covering Strange New Worlds, X-Men, maybe Batman Cape Crusader. That sound good?
Sounds good to me, Bob.
All right. This has been Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.